Hey YouTube, it's Tuesday, December 11th, 7:07 p.m. And for this vlog thing, I'm gonna do things a little differently. I think it was last video or the video before that I mentioned I was gonna start talking about things that are happening in the Middle East and getting more involved with that since my husband's in the army now and all. I get a little more educated, and I haven't been active about learning about things on the news and in the Middle East probably since 2006, I want to say. So it's been a few years. I've been kind of out of the loop. I always knew there was this thing going on with Syria and Egypt. I didn't quite know or understand to what extent it was happening, but I'm pretty much going to use this video to cover both of those. I'm going to start with Egypt. Basically, I'm just going to kind of read a little thing from the BBC News. Basically, they titled the article, Egypt Crisis, Morsi supporters and opponents rally. Thousands of demonstrators in the Egyptian capital, Cairo, have joined rival rallies as emotions run high ahead of planned referendum. The opposition breached a barrier outside the presidential palace, but there was no violence, thank God, because there has been a lot of violence there going on since this whole thing started. Says Islamist President Mohamed Morsi, who called the vote on Saturday to ratify a new constitution, has called on the army to maintain security. Egypt has asked the IMF to delay a loan because of political turmoil. Egypt requested the delay to the $4.8 billion loan after President Morsi suspended a program to increase taxes. Prime Minister Hisham Kwandel told a news conference about that. The International Monetary Funds says it stands ready to continue supporting Egypt during the ongoing transition and to consult with the authorities and the resumption of discussion regarding the loan. The Egypt economy has been hard hit by nearly 2 years of political upheaval since the protests which toppled ex-president Hosni Mubarak in February 2011. It goes on to say that opposition marches from different parts of Cairo converged on the presidential palace, which has been walled off with concrete blocks and ringed with tanks. Hundreds of soldiers are guarding the palace perimeters. Now listen to this part. This is crazy. Like, I can't believe people really go this far over there. Then again, I've never been to the Middle East. I don't know what it's like, but it just does not seem safe at all. It says here, opposition protesters breached the temporary wall, but the Republican Guard allowed the demonstrators to go through. Several thousands were in the presidential compound on Tuesday evening. The military is allowed to arrest civilians, but clearly decided not to use those powers. I'm assuming that means they let the civilians go through. They didn't think of them as a threat or that they were hurting anyone. Probably because they weren't hurting anyone at the time. It doesn't seem like there was any violence going on at the time. Luckily, it was more of just them being riled up. I can't believe they actually breached concrete walls. Like, they pushed through concrete walls. Some of them even climbed on top of them. I was watching a video earlier about this. Some of them actually climbed on top of these walls where they put tar in the top, so it would be difficult for them to go through, and they didn't care. They just went straight through. It's like, people are crazy. It says here, Islamist protesters who support President Morsi and the draft constitution are gathering around Tahrir Square. There were also protests in the cities of Alexandria and Asiyut, which means it's not just in Cairo, it's in other parts of Egypt as well. It's very relatively widespread. The head of Egypt's judges club said 90% of judges refusing to oversee the referendum. Under Egyptian law, judges are required to supervise the vote at each polling station, which I found interesting because I didn't know that. I don't think that's required here in the United States, but they're completely different places, completely different laws. It says, meanwhile, the head of the military has called for a national dialogue to resolve the crisis, saying he was speaking only in a personal capacity. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi invited the opposition, along with judges, media leaders, and Muslim and Christian clerics, to an informal gathering on Wednesday. Does say, however, At least 9 people were hurt early on Tuesday when shots were fired at opposition protesters in central Cairo. So I'm assuming before they breached the cement blocks and before the other protests in what was it called, Tahrir Square happened, that this was a separate event. It seems like 9 people were hurt early Tuesday. Shots were fired. Protests in central Cairo. The opposition wants the referendum scrapped, arguing that the constitution was drafted by an Islamist dominated assembly, weakens human rights, and fails to guarantee women's rights. The president has tried to calm public anger by annulling a 22nd of December decree boosting his powers, but has given the army powers to arrest civilians until the results of Saturday's referendum are announced. Saturday will be a national holiday to allow state employees to vote in the referendum. The state-run MENA news agency reports, however, some rulings with controversial decree which stripped the judiciary of any right to challenge his decisions will stand. The general prosecutor, who was dismissed, will not be reinstated, and the retrial of former regime officials will go ahead. Patrol bombs were thrown and shots fired at opposition demonstrators camping in Tahrir Square in the early hours. 10 people were injured. The Al Misri Al Yan newspapers has reported that pro-Morsi demonstrators from an umbrella group calling itself the Alliance of Islamist Forces, made of Muslim Brotherhood and Salafist groups, were said to have gathered on 2 mosques in Nasser City, a suburb of Cairo. Hundreds of Islamist demonstrators staged a sit-in outside a Cairo media complex that hosts the studios, several private TV channels. Pro-Morsi protesters accused of bias. 7 people died, and hundreds more were wounded in clashes between rival protesters outside the palace last Wednesday night. It goes on and on and on, saying Morsi's granted the army power to arrest people, police, blah, 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 blah. The article goes on for like another 2 pages. Basically, it seems like Egypt is split, like pretty much split in half. Now we're finding out that there's this group, an umbrella group. I don't know exactly what that is. If someone can enlighten me in the future on what it is, that would be great. That has formed their own opposition against this. They're for Morsi, so they're pro Morsi, they're pro president. They're basically what he wants to put into play as far as the laws and whatnot. Basically, it just seems like people are protesting for and against this new decree. It seems that this new law, from what it sounds like, will give the government more power, and people are opposing it because they want equal rights. And I guess because this gives the government more power, it takes away more rights. So it's basically tradition versus new age is what it seems like, and Egypt is split. I'm thinking Egypt might become, I know maybe this is too much to think of from what little information I've gathered, but it seems like Egypt is going to split into 2 different countries in the future. That's what I'm getting out of this, is that, I feel like they're not going to come to an agreement anytime soon, and they're going to end up splitting the country in half, and there's going to be an all-out war there between them. I feel like it's going to be something similar to what happened in North and South Korea, and I'm not looking forward to that because we might end up having to get involved. But I think that's so much for Egypt, and I'm actually going to put a continuing blog because I didn't realize how much I put in this one. It's already in 9 minutes and change, and again, YouTube 10-minute thing. So I will put a part 2 up very shortly. Stick around.